Thanks, Chair. I suppose it's actually hard to listen to all the opening statements without feeling kind of sickened or furious. Some 90,000 children in Ireland live in consistent poverty. We've been discussing this issue for several weeks on the committee now, but for generations it's been a consistent issue. And, to a certain extent, I think, we know what a lot of the issues are and we know what the solutions are as well. And we have done for some time. And I think we have to face up to the kind of state's failure to address those systematic issues that permit that kind of child poverty to continue. So thank you all so much for coming before the committee today and for sharing your really valuable insights with us. A few questions. Firstly, for St Vincent de Paul. In your recent pre-budget submission, you highlight the in-work poverty amongst one-parent families and recommend the removal of the cliff edge for working lone parents by extending the cut-off for job seekers transition payment until the youngest child reaches the end of second-level education. I wonder if you could describe the difference a measure like that would make. And then also in that document, you stress the importance of closing the gap between social welfare rates and the real costs facing households. So I just wondering if you could elaborate for the committee on the importance of benchmarking social welfare payments to adequacy. And then for one-parent family, similarly, you discussed the role of income inadequacy as a core driver of poverty in one-parent families. You highlight the importance of benchmarking social welfare rates against the cost of minimum essential standard cost of living. So if you elaborate on that for the committee as well, it would be very helpful. And you provide particular insight into the importance of tailoring employment and training supports in enabling lone parents to take up and increase their working hours. Could you give examples of what measures you have in mind? And just on that kind of furious and kind of sickened note, I suppose, just to anybody, if any of the witnesses wanted to comment, I suppose even with all of those changes and the different things in place that we could do in terms of budgets and social welfare payments and all of those things, I'm wondering if without an actual provision for a state provision of childcare, is it possible to reduce the gap in terms of one-parent families being 6 times, more likely to experience poverty to that extent? Obviously we need all of the measures, but I'm wondering without that actual provision of childcare for one-parent families that's accessible and free, are we ever going to get rid of that? Because I remember even, growing up with my mother, a single parent, getting out to milk the cows every day. It's almost an impossible task to get to work when you have children you can't afford childcare. So without that actual provision, I'm wondering, will all the other measures actually, bring one-parent families to the same par as two-parent families? Thank you.
Deputy. So I'll actually start with either Miss Kiernan or Miss Kelly, whoever wants to come in on that one, and then we'll go through to St Vincent de Paul and Quarryvale as well. So we'll start with one family, whoever wants to respond to the question there.
Niamh, you're going to take it, are you?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond.
Okay.
I suppose just in relation to the question about childcare, I agree, Deputy. I think that without childcare, it's very difficult to see how you can address things like ensuring access to quality employment and education. I would say the same extends to a variety of other areas. So, for example, we know one-parent families are more likely to be in insecure and poor quality housing, and without a secure place to live, the same thing applies. It's very difficult for families to actually engage in things like education or get access to employment because they're so concerned with just keeping the roof over their heads. And equally then, again, you mentioned benchmarking, and that's something that we see as crucial because without a standard of living that meets your needs, you really can't survive. You can't get by. You can't think about anything outside your immediate crisis circumstances. So it's imperative that the payments that are made to families through social protection are enough to meet their needs. And we see a good example in this from the Vincentian Partnership for Social Justice Research, looking over the last number of years in terms of how social welfare payments to older households has been sufficient, and through measures taken at government level has been sufficient to meet their needs, and has seen that over the last number of years, those households have fared, I suppose, I don't want to say fared well, but they've fared adequately in terms of social protection. And we see the same thing at the opposite end with one-parent families, where families, for example, on working family payments are faring particularly badly. Over the last budget, they were seen to come out slightly below the cost of living increases. So the measures are there. I mean, it's something that can be included in a targeted approach to families, the benchmarking of social welfare, but it does need the other services pieces. So it needs things addressed like childcare, like housing, like access to employment and education. In terms of education, there are a number of good schemes available. Oftentimes parents aren't made aware of them, or they aren't given a pathway to enter these schemes for education or even employment. I mean, we hear time and time again from parents saying that they are being activated into a particular role that doesn't suit their skill set, or that they would like to get back into education to upskill. Because really, to address child poverty, families need to be earning a decent wage, that they can pay for their housing costs, that they can pay for all the costs associated with raising children, because these families, they want to provide for themselves. They want to be able to get ahead and to have enough, I suppose, education to build a life for themselves, rather than just relying constantly on social protection. I think a key part would be addressing a number of anomalies within the system. So there are, in terms of education, there are a number of issues relating to, say, for example, the SUSI grant isn't available for part-time courses, which is a real barrier for one-parent families, particularly when you take into their childcare needs into account. There are some other anomalies. For example, if someone's on JST or one-parent family payments, and they're in receipt of rent supplement, they're automatically moved on back to training and education allowance, which precludes them from getting a SUSI maintenance grant. Last year, there was a really good example where the Minister for Social Protection implemented a law called Catherine's Law, which stopped the means testing of PhD stipends for people in receipt of disability allowance. Yet the means testing still exists for people on one-parent family payment and job seekers transitional payments. So these are just some examples of technical issues that could be ironed out within the system that would really benefit families. But I think they need to be underpinned, these small technical changes need to be underpinned by a widespread benchmarking of social protection against a minimum essential standard of living. And I think that the way to achieve that really is, again, going back to what Karen said at the outset about the need for a national child poverty strategy, because all of these measures that we're discussing here today are of value, and they're worthwhile implementing, they're worthwhile looking at. But without that overarching strategy, there's not a coherent approach, and there's not the protection there for children against shocks to the system that could come down. For example, at the moment, we're looking, obviously inflation is a big issue, but what we need is a concerted effort from government that's long-term, sustainable, and is looking at all these different areas and bringing them in together. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Keelty, did you want to come in on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Kearns, for your question. In relation to the cliff edge, it'll probably just add to what Niamh has already outlined, but in relation to the job seekers transition payment, once your youngest child reaches the age of 14, you must either switch to the working family payment or move on to job seekers allowance. What that means for a lone parent, for example, who's working full time, they will lose €53 a week. simply because their youngest has turned 14. They can't take up any more hours because they're already working full time. So there's no way of them increasing their income. So they're left with this loss of income at a time where you have a teenager, which is more expensive in terms of the costs to households in terms of raising teenagers. And they're still in school. You still have all the caring responsibilities. So extending it out until the end of secondary school would mean that that cliff edge is removed at that point. And their children are then over the age of 18 and maybe going into college, and then that they can then move on to other payments at that point, where there's an opportunity maybe to engage in terms of training, and that there's still support there in terms of income, because lone parents, we need our social protection system to recognise the additional caring responsibilities of lone parents, and they need to be treated differently because of that. And that's really important. And this is a legacy of the drastic cuts and changes to the one parent family payment that took place from 2014 onwards. And a lot of them have been rolled back, and we have seen improvements in the living standards of some lone parents, but there's still critical and very entrenched issues there in terms of how the social protection system and in-work supports are designed for lone parents. It's a very complex system, so streamlining it would be really effective in supporting lone parents throughout their children's lives as well. In relation to benchmarking, again, to add to what Niamh said, it's really about using evidence to derive how our social welfare system is set. At the moment, it's arbitrary, and at the moment, it's totally inadequate. There's still a gap there of €82 between a social welfare income for a lone parent with 2 children and the cost of a minimum essential standard of living. So that's why we have issues related to food poverty. That's why families are cutting back and going into debt. So having a system that is adequately benchmarked, that provides a standard of living for everyone in society, a standard that no one is expected to live below. That would be really progressive and a really important step in tackling child poverty. It's not cheap to do, and it would require changes over a number of budgets. But as the research that we highlighted in terms of the cost of the poverty to the state every year, it's significantly less than that. So it's definitely money well spent in terms of preventing the damaging impacts of poverty on people's lives as well. In relation to childcare, absolutely fundamentally critical in ensuring families can get out of poverty, that they have options, that they have choices. At the same time, we need to ensure that people who can't work because they're caring for children with additional needs or with disability have an income that they can live on and live with dignity. And that's why the full implementation and recognising the cost of disability in terms of the Indicon report that was recently published is also critical as well, to ensure those extra costs are supported through our social welfare system. Thank you.
Dr. Kilty, did you want to add anything at this time, Ms. Johnson?
Thanks. Sorry, apologies. It wouldn't go off mute there for a while.
No problem.
I agree with the previous speakers. I just wanted to add that also how childcare can be play such a positive and important role in prevention and early intervention with children and families in any situation that might be relating to child poverty or issues leading to child poverty. Sometimes childcare is the only service that a family accesses, and that can be the way in towards addressing issues, gaining training, education, employment, all the different issues. Childcare places play a very important role in our society and should be available to everybody.